So like, I don't know. Do you guys want to record a podcast or something today?
Let's do it.
All right. Cool. Well, without further ado, welcome to the Boost. Welcome to the September edition. Today we have with us Brian Geddes of the Direct Ad Factory, the illustrious Brian Geddes. And Brian, why don't you tell us just before we get started, just a little bit about what you're up to, what you do, and sort of what your background is.
Yeah, so I've been in kind of sales and marketing and my whole life. Got out of high school and started selling cars, the belly-to-belly type thing. And then I got into, I guess, the internet marketing 1980-something and worked at Computer Book and Supply Center and faked my way through it until I got my education on the streets. And then ended up doing a lot of online marketing, Casale Media. Best year was 44 million in sales personally, working with some of the big boys, kind of the arbitrage model.
Okay.
Nice. After doing that for 10 years, I started doing some consulting, ended up down in the States for a couple of years in Santa Monica, which wasn't too tough to take. Came back up to small town Nova Scotia, and decided to see if we could help local businesses do some more of a direct marketing. If you spend $1, you got to earn $1.10 almost immediately, or it's just not worth doing. The sort of thing that happened in the arbitrage businesses, we had to pay CPM, which is cost per thousand, for eyeballs. So if I'm advertising on CNN, and there's millions of eyeballs, I have to pay that CPM rate, whether I sell anything or not. But I sell the results on a CPA, or a cost per acquisition basis, which means if I start advertising the HE double hockey sticks out of something and don't sell anything, then that can put the lights out for the whole company in the space of days.
Gotcha.
So it's a bit of a tightrope, and it's something that isn't that prevalent yet in local. We're doing some direct media buying, but most people, do the Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and then Google ads. We kind of call it the fling model, and everybody's doing the exact same thing. So we're trying to get them out of that. We just opened up a copywriting division.
Okay.
Division is me with using my left hand instead of the right. And it's totally based on getting response for people, the old long form sales letters and sales funnel stuff, so that, again, a lot of people have been disappointed, especially in local advertising. Somebody talks them into buying a newspaper ad for $2,000 and they get zero response from it, and then they never want to advertise again. Obviously, every business has churn. And if you're not replacing them somehow, at the end of the day, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my background in a long-winded, talking head kind of horrifying way.
No, that's awesome. So, I mean, but really, like you've been with the digital aspect of things like pretty much since the get-go, hey?
Yeah, it's funny. One of the companies I worked for when I started was Casale, but it was before kind of the whole thing was going. So at 1.1% of all the emails in the world were going through the Casale servers. So we kind of grew up with it. They were the first ones to do a searchable database on the internet. So they were a real tech company, and it was kind of a pivot when they went into marketing. Excuse me. But they were smart guys. I mean, the kid was 8 years old, and what he did was he set up a South Park website. Now, we were driving a lot of traffic because of who we were, and so he was the son of the owner. So he set up a South Park site that was horrifyingly bad and got affiliates so that people would land on the site and bounce almost immediately. And in 1980-something, the kid's 8 years old. He's making $600 US a month from this site. So we called them kind of evil geniuses, and then that's the guy that's still running the the media arm of the company now, they've transitioned into an SSP of some size.
Awesome.
That's cool.
What out of curiosity, now obviously we've all done sales in our life to some degree. What kind of kickstarted for you? Like, did you take any kind of specific kind of training, or was it just, you know, thrown into the fire, learn your way through it, adapt, overcome kind of thing?
Yeah, the ugly Marine training. So when I went out of high school, I went into the car business almost immediately, and it was used cars, and it was the Wild West, and it was kind of like the lowest guy in the totem pole got fired every month. So you had to, learn that kind of, I said, that belly to belly type of selling, which I think is a great foundation, just in sales in general. So to be able to move that forward. Now, when I was doing the big numbers in the arbitrage, I hardly ever saw anybody face to face. That was all email 90% of the time, and then phone, and then I'd go to three to six conferences a year to see people face to face. But yeah, the selling had to translate into the email, which was difficult at first because obviously that kind of reading body language and that nuance of what you're trying to say, making a joke potentially that doesn't really fly in email. It's tough to put that note on it. So, I got caught a couple times with that.
Awesome. I think we all kind of went the same way, right? Like, you get thrown into the fire, your first real sales job, you're learning the ropes. Well, you hope you learn the ropes anyways, or you're learning the right things when you get that first position, right? I know I did that. Had no sales experience, jumped in my first. It was hardcore sales, really high pressured, also very, you did in a car dealership, right? I felt like what I was doing was very similar, obviously different industry. It was more web-based, right? Web products. But, we were really forced to dive at the numbers, right? Get numbers, achieve numbers, even if we had to use tactics that now I would really refrain upon and be disgusted that I even did it. And then I eventually, when I moved into the next agency I worked with, we did Sandler's, their training.
Sandler selling. Yeah.
Sandler, yeah. So basically learn more of a consultative approach, a way better approach that I still utilize to make the conversations with any prospect, anyone I'm talking with, that much more upfront, like the upfront contract, qualifying them, getting in place that budget and idea and everything up front, so we know that what we're having a conversation about is going to match up, make the most sense. So when we're here talking about how the benefits are going to help you, it's just solidifying everything in place and moving on to the agreement, right? But just that transition, right, from the first sales I had into that was such an eye-opener for me, because I hated being just, I would say, greasy. And I didn't like doing it, right? Because there was obviously a lot of things you had to push, right? Keep your job, you have to push things, even when you know it's not right. And that just ate away at my soul, right? Like, it just ate at me every day, made me sick that I would lower myself to that company, because that's kind of where they set their mandates and they set their targets and KPIs and all that stuff. So adapting into an actual process that made people feel comfortable, but also cut out the bullshit, right? And made it transparent, made it so much easier as I progressed, even in my own business, having conversations with people. It's just night and day on all sides of the spectrum for me.
Yeah, but it's probably not, again, like you say, when you look back, it's a different time. So when I got out of the car business, I immediately went into the Florida real estate business, and we did dinner sales. And our only goal was to drive somebody to go down to Florida where the real sharks were.
Yeah.
And that was a fry or die. So, we used every tactic in the book, and to the potential where you're almost in fistfights. So it's, taking control of the couple, moving them in their chairs for no reason, touching their arms so that they'll stop talking, which works from a physical standpoint. And then it was like, if they had objections, we would attack their manhood, right? I've got to talk to my wife and say, oh yeah, usually in my family I make decisions because I'm the man. And
Shots fired.
it was like a gladiator fight.
Yeah.
But it certainly put, that in perspective when you started learning different techniques. And one of the guys I love is Benjamin, the UK's most hated sales trainer. If you get a chance to take a look at some of his stuff on YouTube, but he's kind of the same mindset as me, and that's that no bullshit, no transparency. But he's I don't do RFPs. I just refuse to do them. I think through the history of what I've done, they're just a waste of time. But he doesn't do RFPs, doesn't discount. If you don't want to deal with them, don't deal with them. He's pretty cut and dry type of guy, and I think that's something that's needed, especially when you go in and you see all the stuff that happens and the number of people that have been hornswoggled in the internet space, in the digital advertising space, the amount of money that's spent. I mean, with the programmatic platforms, we're talking about companies like Google admitting there's up to 40 or 50% ad fraud on all the programmatic buys that they make. The cascading commission structure. So I get my SSP, my supply side guy, who then goes into my platform management guy, that then goes into my platform something else guy, 50% fraud. So I spend $200 and probably 30 of it is actually going out to potentially somebody that can buy what I want.
Mm.
So, I hate that kind of stuff. One of the reasons I got out of that media was just the fact that fraud is prevalent, and no matter how hard they've tried to fix it, I think they're doing a better job now, but it's still 50% fraud. So who do you talk to in this era? So everyone's swinging over to digital, but how many, I saw these pandemic gurus that were teaching, and that's one of the things we were doing. We were doing educational courses provided by government sponsored for us to help people to pivot. But most of the stuff was the old school stuff, but with an eye to digital because I got the digital background. But the amount of digital gurus that could tell you how to get through a pandemic that's never happened before within the space of 2 weeks was astonishing to me. Who knew there was that tsunami of information in the world? So that's the kind of stuff that just drives me goofy.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that we see a lot within the digital space, even just within content itself, is like these instant experts.
Ugh.
It's like, oh, there's a thing happening right now, whether it be trendy or whether it be something like a global health crisis, but that overnight, have a YouTube channel up with 15 videos of them pontificating on how to do this, how to do that, before we've even really gotten a chance to even work it out.
Yeah. Like we have no idea what it's even going to look like. And they already have the game plan out. I was like, this thing changed every friggin' week, right? From regulations to shutdowns to every place being different, right? They can't paint everywhere with the same brush because some states are going to be different from provinces. They're going to be different from other countries, right? That had completely different regulations. So I saw it every day, especially when it came to selling digital products or selling on like Shopify, e-commerce, right? Because that became such a huge space where sales were going nuts. Amazon, all these big e-commerce companies just blowing up with record profit margins and everything. And these guys all starting to try to capitalize on things that are already in place, but really really hammering home why you should be listening to them and pay them $1,000 to do it. Right.
Well, the crazy part is, Shopify now owns a lot of people's websites. And if you think they're continuing to be free for the next 5 years, you're a crazy person. But nobody thinks about that. They go, okay, I'm going to get on Shopify. And then they don't think of the old saw as, I put up my website, and it's akin to putting up a billboard on the superhighway, but facing it in the wrong direction. So how am I going to find all these people? And that for me is always the kicker. All the stuff that people do without thinking about lead generation, which is response is the only metric that matters. All the rest, click-through rate and all that, conversion is the only thing that matters. Response is the only thing that matters. And who's actually measuring that for you? And that's why we're talking about the copyright aspect of it. When I look at the stuff that's out there, our contention is that from a lead generation standpoint, 95 and plus websites are of no value. And the stuff that the people are putting out, they don't have any idea about even the old school copywriting stuff. So, it's got to be new, it's got to be easy, it's got to be big, it's got to be useful, it's got to be urgent, it's got to be ultra specific. How does that headline get built? How does that look? Just putting together a little missive now, saying, everyone thinks they can drive, everyone thinks they can dance, and everyone thinks they can write. So it's just, to me, it's just crazy. You spend all this money setting up all this stuff, using consultants, using designers, using web designers, graphic designers, and then you write your own copy. And it's just like, it's just horrifying. So
it all kind of falls apart, yeah.
Right? Because they don't want to, everyone thinks they can write. So it's that same type of educational process. I'm just putting up the the website, and one of the things I'm saying is, you've either got the zombie, the goldfish-itis, and leakage. So I describe each one of those as why they're losing their lead generation, and I bet them I'll give you 500 free words of copywriting if I can't find one of those conditions on your website.
Yeah. And and that's the other thing too. Like I myself, I see huge value in having your copy be on point, because it doesn't matter how optimized your website is, how fast it loads, or all of its wonderful features. If people get to it and they still have either no idea what the hell you're up to, or it's just mamby-pamby bullshit left and right about how they're going to fulfill some magic need for you. I see it as well, Brian, checking out different websites, especially in my own space, like in the voiceover space, is that there's like almost no consistency from service page to service page.
Well, I love the fact you said namby-pamby, because I use that all the time, and I get that off of that Geico ad. Like the guy from Full Metal Jacket as a therapist.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite clips ever, right? The one he calls him a jackwagon. So that's in my head a lot. But one of the things with websites we see from a website design is they don't have a reason for the page. This page should have a standalone reason. The only reason is to lead you to the next page. That's the only outcome that you want. So how are you writing that? And then when I talk to people, we're doing all this teaching, and we did all these free brainstorming sessions, so 300 people. And when you talk to them and say, well, why did you pick that font? Why did you pick that color? Why did you put that placement of that graphic there? Why did you pick? Nobody has an answer. They just kind of, it looked pretty, or I did it on Wix, or my designer said that it's great, but they've got no real reasoning for it. And I think that's the same with copy. They put it out, they write it, it sounds good, but the content, it's got to have emotion. We tell everybody it's either a negative emotion, a fear of loss, or a positive emotion, but anything on any page, any social media, anything, blog, has to start with emotion and has to engage the reptilian brain, the fight or flight, right? So it's like, I don't know you, I don't know if I should be running, but I certainly don't trust you, and I don't have any emotions about you either way. So if you don't engage them first with that emotion, then the rest of it is, you're lucky if you get a 1% or a 0.1% response rate.
Right.
Yeah.
But a lot of people just don't do it.
And I agree. I've done countless audits on websites, and I say half the time I'm like, what is it that you do? Like, what are you trying to convey to me? Because I don't understand. I'm coming here trying to get an idea of your services, right? But it doesn't make sense. I've had to ask them, you have to clarify. I've never heard of this before. Most people might not know your service at all. It might be something new. So if we're not getting understanding where the value is for this new service, right? There's a lot of different therapy techniques and new things that I've talked with people. And I'm like, why am I doing this over something else that's already been conventional, right? Like, how are you taking me through the process of me understanding it, then being like, oh, this sounds like something I need to fix X problem, right? It sounds like the solution to my needs. But a lot of the time it's very generic stuff. It's almost like they try to take terminology or something without it really flowing, right?
Yeah, and again, that's traditional. So you've got a headline, you've got a lead, you've got body copy, and then the offer.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to engage. The engagement is the hook, is the lead, the headline, and again, that's got to encapsulate. New is very powerful, and easy, safe, and the big idea. So they'll give you a hint. The good ones will give you a hint of what's going on, and then explain it, give you the testimonial, the social proof, and then make a no-brainer offer. Something that, you just go boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, plus wait. That's not all.
Yeah.
But it's the same. The headline, the avarice will make you rich beyond the dreams of avarice was 100 years ago, where they laughed at me when I sat down at the piano to play, but they're not laughing anymore. That still plays today.
Right.
But a lot of people have never even heard of it. So again, it's that basis of what is it that you're trying to do, and then set up your copywriting, your graphics, your website, your sales funnel to achieve your goal. But it seems like a lot of people kind of throw things up and don't really have a goal. I mean, they want to sell stuff, but they don't understand anything other than that.
Well, I think that's an important point too, right? Because, and here's the thing: if you're on a website, not for entertainment, you're there for a reason. Whether it be you're researching information, or you're researching a product, or you're looking to buy a product or a service, or whatever. So, for the most part, if somebody is on your business website, they get that you're a business and that you're trying to sell something. So I like the idea is setting them up a comfortable environment for which they can actually do that and know what they're buying into at the same time, right? Like, and you see it all the time. I like the breakdown, Brian, that you just gave. That idea of like, you've got your headline, like your hook, and then you're working your way down towards that offer, down towards like, if you're still with us at this point, this has got to be something that's going to work for you. This has got to be something that you're going to be able to use.
Yeah, I think that's, part of the process again is it's almost like you need two websites. You've got your one where people explore, but before you get there, then you need the landing page model where you're going to get contact information so that you get permission to engage.
Mm-hmm.
Because generally speaking, it might be a pair of shoes or something, but anything over and above a direct kind of product purchase is not going to happen on your website most of the time.
Right.
So you've got your lead generation. Once a lead gen is captured, then you can automatically send them to your website, which is now an exploration. You don't care where they go or what they do because you've already got that information. But again, 95% of people drive traffic to their homepage. They've got paralysis of choice on there.
Mm-hmm.
A goldfish attention span is 9 seconds. A web surfer is 8. So you've got 8 seconds to grab somebody's attention, and you put up 64 different options, including 7 different social media clicks to drive them off the site that you just spent $6,500 to drive them to. It drives me insane having social media plaques on what ostensibly is a landing page.
Right.
So now I go to Facebook, whose job is to drive it back to where I just was. It's like, I've used about 4 ucks today. I'm in an uck mood.
Yeah, I guess that's just where we're at.
I mean, I see that so much, right? With people using Facebook ads or even you doing PPC, right? Not having landing pages set up. It ends up, before we even get into the conversion side of it, right? Because they're sending them to a home page, typically costs are going to be more because it's not as specific, right? Especially for AdWords. Like you want to have something that's going to be more specific to keywords. It's relevant, right? The relevancy is high, right? So I see a lot of people who do it themselves without really looking into it, without understanding it themselves. They do that all the time. Homepage, 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 right? All the time. And again, you're going to send them, and the same things happen, right? There's all these things, and they have to somehow find their own path to where you wanted them to go at the end game, right? So you're trying to put all the trust and reliability on them to make that decision on their own, without it simply just taking them through, right? Just simply taking them through, cutting out the bullshit, cutting out the fancy lights, because it's like a seagull seeing a shiny object, right? Like you said, they're going here, they're clicking here. Ooh, a blog article, boom, boom. It's just like, they only have about 3 seconds or less to really kind of understand what's happening here to make the next call, right? Whether that's reading the rest or bouncing or clicking on something that's going to take them off the main path. But it's so important to have that set up, right? That lead generation offer. That's what I see, and that's what I try to communicate with most people. If you're running Facebook ads, you're doing this, you're getting them through the process, right? If you want to qualify them better, if you're doing lead forms or whatever, to take them somewhere specific where it's going to have more relevancy, you're going to get them the information they need with all the great copy, right? To get that contact information, right? That's the most important thing, because if you get that contact information, then you can hit them up with more information, right? More contact points. So they begin to build more trust with you, because if they just saw your ad, they just saw you. They don't know anything really about you. Maybe they read it like, oh, it's cool. They click the link. That's first step, right? But then there's got to be the rest to build that trust even more, to say, okay, I want to understand what's going on here. Is this relevant for me? Am I going to make a choice? Am I going to be buying something? Right? That's what I find has worked the best for anything I've done.
Yeah, it's crazy, because there's so much stuff that goes into it that people don't know, because it's not their business. They're not supposed to know. So, you're an SEO guy. I know nothing about SEO, so you're going to have to help me at some point.
Sure.
But I do know that the algorithms for Google, for example, are placing more and more weight on content and optimized landing pages, and that sort of idea, versus even just simple buying the AdWord. And people think if they buy the AdWord and pay the most money, they're going to get the most response from Google, which, as you know, is untrue.
Yeah.
And then the statistics show that you're lucky if you're making a buy one get one free offer. You're lucky if there's 3% of the people you've reached online that are interested in buying that today. Another 4% may then get interested in it, but 93% of the people that you've done that ad to have no interest in it. So that we have to explain to people, you need two strategies. You usually say strategy. But one is that short-term BOGO type of thing, but you also have to have the long-term marathon lead generation, where you're reaching out at least monthly and going on like that. So we put it akin to a Ferris wheel, whereas the bottom comes off and buys off, you have that lead generation going in, and so it's constantly filled. So again, there's so many nuances to it that even trying to explain it to somebody, like if we sit down here and we talk for 40 minutes without stopping or taking a breath, and we're kind of 10, maybe 15% into the process, what do you have to think about?
It's very true. And just to touch on the SEO side, just for a brief minute, and like I said, in terms of the copy, we play a balance in this game, because you have to have copy that is going to resonate and lead to those conversions. Right? You need that to sell them on that page. And at the same time, we have to appease Google, because Google is obviously trying to match up specific keywords and user intent to get them there in the first place, right? So anytime I talk with people and they might have written their whole page, right? And they're like, well, I really like this. It really explains me. I'm like, well, that's great, but no one's going to find it, right? They're not going to make that link. So we have to find the balance point between using keywords and having all that great relevant content that's going to help push them into the next stage, right? And then usability. Again, these are the two things that I stress upon the most in SEO, and this is where I've been focusing the most, is the UX, the usability, making sure there's no issues on your website. So if they go to it, they're clicking buttons, it's not working, they're bouncing, right? Something's flashing in front of them, they're just like, fuck, get it out of the way. Like they're bouncing. So you have to make that user experience as best as possible. And Google's making sure that that is a fundamental focal point in the next 6 months to a year, and it's part of their ranking signals, right? So we have to make sure that that's right. And then at the same time, that content, whether it's a blog post or whatnot, like it has to be relevant, it has to have a search intent behind it, and then it also has to have a purpose, right? You're not just writing shit that is not going to do anything, because it's not going to make really any impact on your business. So you have to be able to bring them in, and it has to try to solve some problems or issues that hit home, that leads them to want something else, right? Maybe the first time seeing it, maybe they then want your free lead gen offer. Oh, I trust this article. This is really good. What else do you have for me, right? So get me into that kind of touch point model where maybe you're going through a value ladder or something that's going to give me more information, more value. And then I start building that trust, that reliability. And I'm like, okay, maybe that paid thing that they're talking about might be really good. Right, I'm already kind of sold based on what I've already experienced, right? And I find 98% of the businesses I talk to don't have any of these things in place, right? Yeah. It's a contact form. It's this. There's nothing that makes them want to give me that email, right? They're not just going to put a newsletter. Here's a newsletter. Like I see that all the time. They just have a little box on the website, newsletter. Here you got some tips, and it's just like, well, you didn't give me any tips already, like nothing relevant. Why would I? What are you going to give me? Like
that's the whole thing. I mean, I was just going to bring that up. The number of sites that, hi, welcome to my site. Then a giant pop-up comes up on every page. Sign up for my newsletter, and it's like, why? Why would I sign up for your newsletter?
I'm not there yet.
Knowing to begin with.
That is like 90% of the e-commerce sites I've ever dealt with or had conversations with, like Shopify sites, all that. Same thing. That generic pop-up, newsletter.
Yeah.
It's like they haven't even seen what the fuck your site is yet, right? Yeah. They don't even know what you're selling. Yeah. So it's just like the first thing immediately popping up. I'm like, oh, come on. Or they have 2 or 3. I'm like, yeah, geez, now you really have a problem, right?
Yeah. It's an interesting, from a user, and I'm sure Google's penalizing them for it. But it's just like, it's crazy. It's just, I think a lot of people heard if you build it, they will come. The Field of Dreams might have, ruined a whole generation of people using the noggin about what'll actually happen, right? You're not gonna go to a cornfield in Iowa without some reason to go there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and this is it, and and I see this a lot on service pages specifically. And I know we talk about this a lot with the startup circles and small business and entrepreneurial circles, but like that idea of connecting to your why. And it's great to connect people to your why, but you have to connect them to your product as well. And sometimes, your really wonderful story about your really wonderful situation about how you got into this business is all wonderful, but it doesn't help somebody necessarily buy your product as much as it can help them trust you.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's we always say, what's in it for me, the WIFM radio station, but mine is more, why do I give a shit? So
yeah,
nobody cares, who's concerned about your problems? Nobody. And it's the same thing with what I think will sell. One of the great lessons I learned when I was first getting into sales, and then I was a manager and about to hire my first guy, and he just so happened to be a big boy that walked in and looked a lot like me, and my manager just kind of whispered as he walked by, never hire in your own image. And so it took a little shot at me, which was delightful. But I think that's the thing that's a giant point for people. They think, this is my offer, and I like it because of this, and they think that's why other people are going to like it. And they could be entirely wrong, and they could be entirely that their offer has no value to anybody. Not really. And nobody sits down and talks to anybody before they go full bore. When we brainstorm, we sit down with people and we ask them, I say, so it's 3:00 in the morning, you wake up, you're staring at your ceiling, and you decide that you're going to become a life coach. Why? Why did you decide that? Why did you think you could do it better? What's the differentiator? If I can't have a differentiator, I'm not going to be successful, generally speaking. So the question becomes, what was that? Is it your unique selling proposition? Is it your value proposition? Is it, like Todd Brown says, the big idea?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you think is going to make somebody choose you out of the literally hundreds of thousands of life coaches available to them? And a lot of times they can't articulate that.
Right.
Even when they have clients, they still can't articulate that.
Yeah, and that really harkens back to the importance of good copy as well.
Yep.
Because that shit needs to be clear, right? Like, I mean, I need to know up front before I'm moving forward of what I'm buying into and what need or pain it's gonna serve for me. Because if that's not readily apparent to me, I've already bounced. I'm off your website. I am the 8-second guy.
Yeah, because you can categorize it. That's death.
Mm.
If your copy doesn't lead to not being able to categorize you, then you are going to bounce, right? I'm a life coach. I'm going to give you a safe environment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I've heard that before. Bounce. I'm going to gently massage your nostrils. That's different. Maybe that's something I want to know why you would do that. So again, it can be something that sounds insane, but it's something that you can't allow the web surfer to categorize the instant they get to your site. So if you're a yoga instructor and you have hummingbirds in the background, and then you say, the hot yoga is the most delightful because the temperature's high. Well, I can categorize that. I've heard it before. I'm
Right.
going to newsgroup.com instead of you. So again, that's part of that copy process. And
Yeah.
a lot of, a vast majority of stuff that I see doesn't address that issue.
I think that is fucking solid advice, man.
Yeah, I mean it's big. You've got to be able to, and Todd Brown again is a kind of guru, and I like him a lot. And he talks about the big idea.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a new way of doing things, but at the minimum, it has to be a new way of packaging things, explaining it. So we always talk about the outsourcing business.
Mm-hmm.
10, 15 years ago, everyone wanted to be outsourcing so they could be a virtual corporation and sit on the beach and collect money. 100 books came out. None of them did very well until the guy came out with the 4-hour work week. That book didn't say a damn thing that was different than what everybody else was saying, but he sold 2.3 million copies on New York Times bestseller list for 4 years simply from the title.
Yeah.
And that's that big idea thing that we keep harping on. And it's tough. It's tough to come up with the big idea and the unique method. But those are things that are really important. And it flummoxes a lot of people when you try to explain it to them.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be their process is the same. Everyone says we're top quality, we deliver, we care the most, we have the nicest couches, we've got great carpet. Everyone says the exact same thing. So what is it that you can coach me on that's going to lead me to the promised land? And what is my promised land? It's not what you think it is. You sure as hell better find out what it actually is.
Yeah. Yeah. And that goes back to the whole thing. I mean, and we talk about this often, John and I, in that, like, knowing who the hell you're talking to, and I mean really knowing them, not imprinting upon them or projecting upon them what you think they think, because 9 times out of 10 you're wrong.
Absolutely.
100%. And that comes with the whole customer discovery, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's part of getting people into things and understanding and testing and really analyzing, what it is that they're seeking, right? Because if you can narrow down your audience to a specific group that fits with your product or service, you're going to have better success. And obviously, if you can match that up, the copy becomes a lot more coherent. It makes a lot more sense when you're trying to guide someone along, when that resonates with that specific person, right? If you're just throwing random shit out there and you don't know if there's a connection, then you're going to be it's going to be tough. It's going to be a lot harder. It's like going up a hill with a big rock, right? So
is that Sisyphus?
Yeah, exactly. So trying to get an idea of who your audience is, your ideal customer, what are their pains, what are their issues, what are they like, really find out those elements. Because if you can make that connection with your copy and your design and everything fits, I mean, you're going to have a better chance as they're going through that process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's at this point, from a marketing perspective, you want to find that niche. And, one of the things from copywriting, one of the 4 U's is ultra specific. So you want to become a big fish in a small pond, because most local businesses don't have the wherewithal to go after bigger businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have that international flavor. As Shark Tank boy there, Mr. Wonderful, says, they'll crush you like the cockroach you are if they think that there's something actually good. So, one of the aspects of copywriting, even, beginning to copyright, is finding that niche, that ultra specific niche, and becoming an expert at it and doing it very well. And I think that's the same thing with finding your clients' demographics and knowing that initially they're going to lie to you, especially, if you're a life coach. I'm not going to tell you that, my secret desire is to be massaged by pygmies. That's something that you're going to have to drag out of me. So how does your customer discovery focus on that, knowing, it was so interesting. I was down in the States in Santa Monica when Trump was first running, and everybody was writing him off as a joke, and everybody was saying, he's saying all these things that would have killed other politicians. And when we did polls and we were talking to people, they are all, would you vote for Trump? The natural thing was to look around and then say, no way, I wouldn't vote for Trump. But you knew that wasn't the case. But nobody would admit it. And that's why the polling was off so badly, because it's not something they would say out loud. And when most companies do customer discovery, they settle for the first answer.
Yeah.
Most often than not, if it's not a lie, it's certainly no depth to the reply.
Yeah.
That's funny you mentioned that, because I was in Boston it was in October. I was down for a Jays game, watching the Red Sox and Jays. And I remember, because obviously we were curious, and of course we asked almost every single person of the upcoming election that was the next month, where was your mindset? Who you were voting for? And it's the same thing. When we left to come back home, we were all just like, holy fuck, he's going to win. No, I swear to God. We were joking about it, but I'm like, man, that is this, it's funny how it goes. And all the polling and everything beforehand. And it was I think they missed the point. They missed a lot of people that wouldn't necessarily have put their vote down in the pre-polling and all that other stuff, right? All the websites. They didn't give a shit then. And maybe then they also didn't, the same kind of thing. They're looking around being like, oh, I don't really want to say yet who I'm voting for, right? But come November, you'll find out. And that's what I found too. And it's funny, just the parallel.
Well, and it's so true. I found this as well throughout my own discovery process, in that and honestly, my whole life of sales, you can never settle for that first answer, right? Because people, I don't know if it's like a social instinct or what, but they want to please you, right? They want to give you these affirmative answers. They want to help you validate whatever it is that you're trying to go out there and validate. When really, when you're trying to start a business and you're trying to, whether it's do research for a product or a service that you want to offer, you want people to put it under scrutiny, right? And really tell you. I had to drag out of a gentleman who I met with, I think 3 or 4 times, and I think it was on the 4th time he finally told me. He was like, Colin, one of the things that you will never hear in talking to any audio engineer or creative ad firm in talking with voiceover is we actually really like it when voiceover artists have more than just basic audio engineering knowledge, right? It makes our jobs way freaking easier. But the problem is, in the way that the market is set up, it's impossible for me to charge for that when it is going through another studio or a creative ad firm where they have, a group of people on site who get paid good fucking money to do that shit. Right. So I had to change about how I was going to offer that. Right. And, it's people are either on one side or the other. They either right away just want to help you, or they're on the other side and they have no interest and they're not at all interested in helping you or trying to help you come to any answer. And some people you just got to badger.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of your sense and experience and how that works, and being able to separate the wheat from the chaff.
Mm.
I mean, the worst sales job for me is when the guy agreed with everything, would never buy. So, I mean, there's no objection. Everything he said was great, 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 great. Yeah, let's pick this up. Send me your brochure. I mean, I used to have a little, when I go on a sales call, I used to have my card and I used to have the brochure and put it in a little tiny plastic garbage can that I got from the dollar store. I say, here, I'll save you a step. I've already thrown it out. So just to be, let's all be aware of how this game is actually played.
Mm.
And it's that breaking patterns. It's making it easy for people to buy. We see a lot of stores and policies that make it easy for the store, but it doesn't make it easy for the person to buy. I mean, I went to Kent and I had to, I went to the cashier. He said, oh, you have to go over here and get a slip. I went over and got a slip. In the meantime, I loaded some stuff in my truck, and then I went out to pick up flooring that I wanted. And then I had to go back in, went to the cashier, sent me to these guys again. In the meantime, I had backsplash tiles I could have stolen because they were lost in the translation.
Yeah.
And it's like I've got 4 or 5 touch points to make their life easier, not mine.
Mm-hmm.
That is the same with your websites. We're not trying to do stuff to make it easy for me as a website owner. I want to make it easy for the person to do whatever it is I need them to do. It's got to be frictionless. And again, most people, well, sign up here and here's my CAPTCHA. You got to go through CAPTCHA 3 times.
Yeah.
And you got to do that. I understand the reasoning for it, but it's just a barrier. Put friction on me where I finally say, where's the cart being abandoned? And let's fix that. Where's the video being abandoned? And let's fix that. I mean, people put up the videos, but they don't look at the analytics. I dropped off. I've got a 30-second video. 98% of the people drop off at 7 seconds. Well, what the hell do I have on there? Right? I got to change that. Maybe I should have had myself in there in a swimsuit. That might have been a bad choice.
Well, it depends on the channel. Really, I mean, I'm sure there are places out there, Brian, who would pay good money for that.
Yeah, they call it Brian 24/7, the Bear Channel.
oh man.
So here's my question, Brian. So if we're looking at, especially in Nova Scotia, right, brand new businesses starting up, what's 2 or 3 pieces of advice, brand new business, that they should be focused on right away to get them at least on the path where they can start building from?
Well, I mean, the first thing to do is to make sure your product or service is something that people want and not something that you think they want. We kind of covered that. So from the customer discovery standpoint, you've got to be brutal. You've got to ask more than your 3 relatives. It's like the old salesman saying, the first 3 sales are to your relatives. The 4th one is whether you're a salesperson or not. And it's the same thing with customer discovery. So, they talk about the lean with the minimal viable product and all that, but it's the same kind of idea. What is it that I'm going to try to sell? And then once you've done that, it's a little bit of the idea, and maybe you can start working with somebody, is where is this market? Where do they reside, both online and offline? And what is it I'm really selling? So I'm not, it's the old thing. I'm not selling a drill. I'm selling a hole. So it's the same thing with your business. What is it that you're actually selling? Are you selling, if you're a masseuse, are you selling, less anxiety, or less pain, or better frame of motion? What is it that my people are actually really interested in? And what kind of demographic is that? And, how widespread is it? I see so many people doing a single Facebook ad that they're trying to appeal from 24 to 65 instead of breaking it down into demographics. So figure that out. Who's the 80, the Pareto, who's the 80-20? Who's going to give you 80% of your revenue with 20% of the customers, and start with them first. And then, of course, I'm a landing page. Don't waste a lot of money on a home page immediately. Let's get that sales funnel. You don't necessarily have to have a website. You can kind of do the same thing on Facebook, Instagram, other things, but it's really hoard your money without stopping all your spending. There's so many people that set this up, go to Wix, do their own social media stuff, sit there and, I think it's the old Chinese proverb, man who sits in the chair with his mouth open waits a long time for a fried chicken to fly in. So it's the same thing. People set this kind of stuff up and then wait, and it's not going to happen. So, talk to somebody that knows what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah. And I mean, I can speak from my own experience on that point. I spent the entire month of June trying to set up a Wix site and trying to do all of that myself. And my result at the end of June, well, I'm working with a web developer now. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I find that, like, that's one of the things that, like, obviously, like, I've consulted with so many businesses over the years, and I don't know how many of them right out of the gate build their own site, right? They might invest $100,000 into equipment and all the things they need for everything else, but then they'll spend only $9 a month on their website, right? Build it themselves, cut those corners. And again, it's like, okay, you spent all this money, invested all this money in this, but you're not willing to spend anything on what's actually going to start bringing that business in for you in this day and age, right? The ads, the website, the landing pages, even automations and follow-up and all these things. It's like, I'm just putting this up. Like I said, their copy isn't there. They're not optimized. Things are out of place. It's wonky. It looks like shit. It's not conveying a message where the person's going to say, I trust this website or this provider over the other ones that I just saw. Right? I see it all the damn time, right? Because it's simple. It's easy to do. Easy to do is, I guess, questionable based on your skill level, right? But if I had a nickel, especially in some of the spaces I'm in where they're all Wix sites, right? And they did it themselves, and there's just so much out of place, and it's amazing. Like, 10 minutes of my time, I can tell you all the things that you can do to make this more improved, right? From the usability standpoint, from the visual standpoint, from the gotcha moment where the person's like, okay, I want to go to the next stage, right? I want to go through this website. I want to learn more about what you're doing, or book an appointment or buy this, right? I see it all the time. And usually when you have that conversation with people, they start being more aware, like, yeah, you're right. So you're going to do it?
No. My cousin Irene just finished off a online web design site, so I'm going to let her do it. And my son is in grade 11 English, so he's going to write the copy for him. And it's just like, oh, and then it's just, I mean, it's just crazy. But a lot of it, to be fair, is people have tried something before and got screwed. And that's a giant barrier to entry to anybody that tells them the truth. And again, a lot of people initially don't want to hear the truth.
Yeah.
It's like you go in, you say, hey, your website blows, and they just spent a month doing it. That's a tough sell. You're going to be the messenger that's shot initially, and potentially they're going to, after that, try to work with somebody. But there's so much stuff out there that's just bull.
And see, that's why I always like to approach with these people, right? Because, I mean, like I said, I talk with people website all the time. If they're doing optimization with me, I always talk about, look, these are the things you've done really well. You conveyed this. You're doing these things that I really like. And a lot of the time they're doing something that I'm like, this is a good thing, right? Not everyone's doing what you're doing here. I like it. Like a lot of people, they created videos like on YouTube, and they're good videos and explain their brand and really conveyed that and hammered home a lot of social proof and some elements that, a lot of people miss out on to build that trust element, right? When I tell them, it's like, these are things you're doing good. Now, here's the things we need to look at improving on for these reasons, right? Whether it's to help Google even realize who you are, right? And then when someone actually does find your website because of that, and they go to your site, these are things you need to look at to improve their usability, to improve their time there, to get them to want to learn more, right? Because if those things aren't in place, like I said, they're bouncing away. They're going away. They're finding the next person on the list, So, like I said, it's so important. And like I said, when I'm talking with people, I don't want to give them the shit show, right? Giving them the dread. And it's like, look at this shit. Like you should just be embarrassed. Like, just quit tomorrow, pack up your bags, right? It's I've never used that approach. I would never do it. It kills them. They don't even want to talk to you after that because they're already depressed.
That's like that old joke, right? It's like, only hockey players and hooers come from Montreal. She goes, my wife's from Montreal. Oh yeah, what team? So it's the same idea with that. You have to have that kind of compliment sandwich, right? Oh my God, you're attractive, but you're incredibly fat. But that doesn't mean you sweat not badly for a fat woman. Have that compliment, that's the old joke too. So it's like compliment, then say what the problem is. Compliment. Yeah. My problem obviously is I'm fairly direct. So it's like I can be nice for a while, but then I have to say what I think, right?
100%. And like I said, that's like any audit I do, right? I literally, it's just like, you did this good. You did this good. Like, be proud of yourself, but let's talk about the issues. And these are big problems. Like these are problems that are hindering your business from getting to where you want to be. It could be X, Y, Z. It doesn't matter. It's going to be different for every person I talk to. It's always different. But I want to point these things out, and I'll give you value. I'll say, look, these are things you need to change. If you don't do business with me today, I mean, it is what it is. But you leave today, please look at addressing these major issues or problems that will complement the rest of the great things you just did, right?
Yeah, so this is great. These parts are developmentally postponed, and we'll go from there. But I mean, it's like the Japanese, the Kaizen. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But that's, or Kaizen, whatever it is, but it's that continuous incremental improvement. They're just looking to improve something. It's just like, if I want to sell more this year, I don't need to improve 100%. I need to improve 1% a week, 1% a month. That's that continual improvement. And I think that's what working with people like us potentially can do for people. We always say it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's quicksilver sometimes. We did some work with Girls Go Fly, a foundation. They were getting 300 response or levels on their Facebook things. The first Facebook thing we wrote for them was 5,000, but that's lightning in a bottle. That's not the norm. So the norm is I'll get 450, then I'll get 5 month, then I'll get 550, then I'll get 7. That type of idea. It's got to be that marathon type of mentality. And a lot of the stuff that's happening with smaller business, they're on a shoestring. They've started it. They think they can get away with not spending any money on it. It's not really going to be the case. So it's either going to be a side hustle for the rest of until they're bored and give up, or they have to invest some time and resources into actually making a business. And that's a personal choice.
100%.
And it's hard too. Like, I mean, not every idea, and I hate to say it this way, but not every idea is a good one. Right. And, sometimes you have to put in hours before you realize. I really like what Paul McGinn calls it. He's just like, you just realize that one day you have an ugly baby.
Yeah.
And there's just no amount of dressing it up that you can do that's going to make it attractive to people.
Yeah. And I mean, that was like, honestly, that was like my first business. And I went through Seed a decade ago, right? And I started an online nutrition business. Now, was I a nutritionist? No. Did I know how to code all this stuff back then? Of course not. Right? We had to find people that would come in place. We had a good idea because nothing was really out there at the time. But at the same time, right, as good as the software worked in terms of creating meal plans based on your preferences and obviously your goals and objectives, that worked perfectly. But we couldn't get a front-end developer. Right? 10 years ago, we couldn't get someone to make it not look like an ugly baby. Right? So when you're trying to get that to market and you have an ugly baby, it doesn't matter how good it is sometimes. There's just they're not captivated enough to want to even get introduced to it, right? So again, it's the same kind of thing. You learned like, oh man, like this was we thought was a good idea, but at the same time, it's like, well, we don't really have a tech background, and like, how are we going to run this if it does take off? Like, we didn't have anything in place other than the thought, the idea, right? And then obviously, probably a year or two after, hundreds of these things start popping up, right? They start creating apps so you could start having them on a digital phone instead of having to go to a website and log in and all that. It's just on your phone, and it was easier to manage and utilize, right? So again, it's you learn, right? You can adapt, and it might take you a year of time putting that all together, and you realize, fuck, this isn't going to go anywhere, right? And that's kind of what happened for me in my first venture. And you learn, like I learned, but a lot of these other businesses, they're starting out the very first time. Maybe they have no sales experience. They have nothing in relation to business. They just have an idea. Maybe they were a yoga instructor for someone else. And like, I can do that myself, or something that, something that they've done that they have some idea, maybe I can do this on my own. Right. But again, not looking at all the factors that come into play, the competition, what are other people doing out there? What are you going to do to differentiate yourself? Right? What is going to make you the choice over all the other options? Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of those things that come into play. And like I said, you can have that ugly baby, and sometimes it takes you a year. Maybe it takes you a week. Someone just talking to you and explaining to you, well, it's kind of ugly. Same thing happened to me in Seed with a few people in my own class this time around. Yeah. Right. Where I asked them, it's like, well, how are you going to market this? Like, do you have a prototype for this yet? And they didn't have answers for it. I'm like, I don't really know how this is going to work. Like, where do you make money from this? Like, there's a few things that I'm just like, I don't know. This seems pretty ugly to me, right? Like, I see your intentions are good, right? But it's even having intentions or passion for something doesn't mean it's going to make sense in the market, mm-hmm. right?
I think the perfect thing for that, I'm a Shark Tank addict. So I watch it online. I watch it the States, Canada, the UK, Ireland, Australia, and you'll see that come up where it's a bad idea. Mm. Take it out back and shoot it. Or, that's Kevin.
Just put it down.
But that's that happens in all the countries. But one I was watching the other day was the guy was putting there's some of them are like 8-9 years old now, but he was putting lenses that you could put on your camera. Physical lenses, but the tech guys were saying, look, camera companies are coming out with all of these in the next 8 months, so you'll be squashed like the bug yard. It's a bad idea. Stop. Mm-hmm. Don't spend any more money on it. And that's hard to hear from the dream perspective of people. Mm-hmm. So they think they've heard all the glory stories, they've heard all the Russell Brunson stories, they've heard all this, you're going to be a millionaire, all you have to do is write the perfect sales funnel and you can sell rancid cheese and people will still buy it. So it's that model, that dream that you're somewhat killing, especially if you have to be honest with the guy and say, look, I don't want to work with you. I feel like I'm stealing your money because I don't have any faith in your product. I don't think it's going to work, and here's why. And you can see them getting pissed off. But I'd much rather do that than to take somebody's money and just drive their cash into the ground, and that it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But 100%. There's a lot of people that'll do that.
Yeah. And I mean, even when I consult with people too, right? It's the same thing when we're talking about, search engine optimization, because I get a lot of different businesses that come to me, right? And there's an evaluation process because I got to see, well, like, is anyone searching for what you're doing right now? Like, you might have something that's really unique and there's no one really searching for it. So I'll tell them, it's like, just change your words to this or your title to this, and that you'll probably be found. Okay. Not a lot of people are going to find it, but if they do, you'll be there. But I don't want to, I had consulting clients a couple months ago where I'm like, there's no one else doing this in your area, right? Like, literally you put up your website, you're probably going to be that person because there's no one else. And that's fine for right now until 5 other people are like, hey, this might be a good idea. Let me jump on. Then you get competition. But again, it's all situational. Right? Like, you're going to say, that's a great idea. That's a bad idea. This isn't going to work for this. You might want to look at this type of marketing because it's going to be more proactive to the type of product or service you're doing, right? They might not be searching for it, but maybe if that Facebook ad pops in front of them, they're like, shit, never thought of that before. That might be good. I'm interested in hearing more about this, right? But they might never search for it.
Important. That's incredible. What you just said was incredibly important because that's the aha moment that defies categorization. And that's what we need everybody to say. I never thought of that before. This might have some value to me. And that's incredibly important. So that's one of the underpinnings of the whole system, being able to get somebody that sees your stuff to say that. One of the questions that always comes up is there's no competition, and well, what's the reason for that? Is it because it's a shitty idea?
Right.
You've come up with something really, really different. The odds are 95% more the shitty idea than it is you come up with something really different. But again, stressing that, I can't categorize what you've said. This may have some legs. I'll explore further, is like a pivotal stance, and that's one of your foundations. That's one of your copy foundations, your website foundation, all of it. You got to get people saying that. It's imperative.
Yeah.
100%.
No, that's great. Well, guys, we're at pretty much an hour here now, so we should probably stop wrapping it up. Does anybody have any closing thoughts? I know, like for me, one of my big takeaways, and I mean, this has been a takeaway from many conversations with you, John, as well as a couple with you, Brian, is this landing page piece. Like, I mean, this is so critical to start getting and building up your funnels and doing it early and doing it in I don't want to say an easy way, but in an easy way for your potential clients.
Yeah, that's very important. And, I would say, and it's self-serving, but I would say that, get a professional to do some of this work for you.
Yeah, don't be scared of spending a little bit of cash on your marketing and on your copy and stuff like that. There are people out there, now maybe not all of them, but there are people out there who know better than you, just starting your business for the first time.
Yeah. It's funny. The funniest thing is, you look at new businesses, let's say they're building, they have an office, they're building an office or a reception area, this and that. And they're hiring experts that are coming in and building it, or they're having plumbers come in that are experts in building it. They're not doing their own plumbing. They're not doing their own carpentry. They're not doing all that. Right. It's like, it's funny when it comes to marketing in the digital world sometimes, where it's like, they sometimes almost devalue it. Because it's like, well, I can do that easier. Like, I can technically start a website in 5 minutes on Wix, right? Where it's like, I probably have a lot more learning curve when it comes to, installing a new drain system or something, right? So I find that there's like almost a devaluing of it at the start before they really have that understanding that, like, wow, like if I did this right, the impact on my business is going to be so substantial, right? Like you install good plumbing, that's not going to have a positive ROI on your business. But if you do the right things, you build that right landing page, you have the right ads that are connecting with the right audience, that is going to be what is going to drive your company forward, right? These are the things that they always kind of devalue, but they're the most valuable elements, right? Like I can't stress it enough. Like it really is the most valuable.